we used to run pop-up markets before that. We've definitely pivoted a handful of times, and it's been a very long and stressful journey. But yeah, I would say my expertise is in retail, building technology products, not on the technical side, but on kind of the customer experience side and customer research side.
Hi guys, my name is Avni and I'm the founder of namephÄ. So I graduated from USC last year with a degree in art, technology, and business, and I also got a minor in computer science. I founded namephÄ because I found that it was really, really important to get high school girls thinking about entrepreneurship and learning more about their career. And so namephÄ is a place for teen girls to come together and attend our events. We have lots of different programming and resources for girls to learn more about what it is to have a career in entrepreneurship. And we also have a growing community where we have girls who can get to meet each other and also get to learn more about entrepreneurship.
Awesome, I'll go next. Hi everyone, my name is Amanat. So awesome to be here today, and I'm really excited about the two businesses that chatted before me as well. So I grew up in India and I moved to the United States in 2011. And I went to college here. I went to the Parsons School of Design and I studied industrial design. And 6 months after I graduated, me and one of my really close friends from college, we entered a design competition online that was hosted by Frog and UNICEF. And it was, they were talking about various problems that mothers and kids are facing around the world. One of them was hygiene and hand washing, and this was pre-COVID. So it was definitely a different landscape back then, but we started a brand called Sopan, and our mission is to make hand hygiene fun and accessible for kids around the world. And our main product is essentially a soap that kids can draw with on their hands. So we've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. We sell on Amazon, our website, and a bunch of small retailers.
Hey everyone, my name is Lauren D'Souza. I'm from Toronto, and I am actually just graduated from a school, Wilfrid Laurier University, and I'm working full-time on my venture. So what I'm working on is a interview preparation platform, and our big mission is to create confidence in interviewing. So we basically want to be the sidekick in the interview process because we know that it's really nerve-wracking. And so we're really working on improving communication skills. And so basically we're building this platform where you can go on, you can find your company, find your role, do a mock interview, and then you actually get personalized feedback that assesses your content, your communication, and your confidence. So really all we're about is making sure that you feel absolutely prepared, because in an interview, we all know what it's like 5 minutes before. Your heart is racing. It's completely terrifying. And so we're trying to help in that process and build better communicators for tomorrow. I'm also part of a entrepreneurial program called Next36 in Canada. And it's been a really great experience. If you want to chat about that, I'm open to that as well. And just about the whole entrepreneurial experience, because I feel like it's different for everybody. I'm sure all the panelists agree, because we all have very different ventures and there's different ways that you can get to entrepreneurship, because there's definitely not one clear-cut path, which I think is the most exciting thing about entrepreneurship. So I'm excited to hear more from the panelists and also meet you guys as well.
Hi guys, my name is Nora. First of all, Lauren, congratulations on graduating. That's amazing. Let's see. So yeah, my background is in mechanical engineering. I grew up in Texas and kind of stumbled my way to business school. And from there decided that I wanted to go down the path of entrepreneurship. Yeah, so we're currently building Open Beauty, which is a telehealth platform for clinicians. We build software, and then for community members, we make it easy to find the right provider of your choice. And that kind of came from my experience as a Black woman trying to find a derm that actually knew how to treat my skin. And I realized that there is a huge need. So that's what we're doing. And I am super excited to share my experience raising venture capital here in San Francisco and anything else that's relevant.
Thank you. I loved hearing all of your responses, and you guys are all so impressive. So since most of us are in high school, our next question is, what were you doing and dreaming of when you were in high school?
I was like total straight A student, type A, involved in everything, student government, the environmental club, theater. I took like separate English classes after school. I was always very overprogrammed, and I think in ways that really set me up successfully for entrepreneurship, because you are juggling so much at once and you need to learn to kind of compartmentalize and problem solve in completely different areas of your business all at one time. I think on the other hand, though, it really created a situation for me where I actually like didn't really know what I was super passionate about. I felt like I needed to do absolutely everything at 150% to get into a good college. I needed to, make my parents proud. I needed to, make their investment in my education worth it. I always knew that I wanted to write. I have a book coming out next year about entrepreneurship, so was kind of able to cross that off my list, and that's super exciting. But I think most of what I was doing was just like trying a bunch of different things to kind of figure out what I wanted to sink my teeth into and what I was really passionate about. I, to be totally candid, didn't really study anything in high school that like set me up for what I'm doing now. I actually majored in modern Middle Eastern studies and I minored in creative writing. And I really believe that you don't necessarily need to major in the industry that you're going to end up in or whatever you're going to pursue. Obviously, if you're a mechanical engineer, you should probably go to engineering school. If you want to become a doctor or a lawyer, there are certain, educational programs and classes and courses and degrees that you have to take and get. But I think for me, I've always just had a really strong love of learning. And I think that as our company has pivoted and changed a lot, which I think will happen to most everyone on this call, if you decide to start a business, I always say the business you start isn't necessarily the business that you end up running. I think that like hunger for learning is really important, because you don't end up super stubborn with just wanting to focus on one idea. And as your business evolves and looks different than it did before, you may need to do a whole new round of customer research, a whole new round of market research. And so having that kind of hunger to learn as much as possible, I think really set me up for, running a business.
So cool. Yeah, I wish I was like Allie in high school. Not like the classic straight A, super into my classes type student. I just wanted to try everything all the time. I took computer science classes. I got into math for a second. I got really invested in art for a while. And so it was kind of everywhere in high school. But I always wanted to kind of just go out there and do something and try to make an impact in my community somehow. And so I was really into art in high school. So I was like, oh, why don't I share my art with people? So for a while in high school, I like ran this art therapy program where I was going to different hospitals and homeless shelters and trying to share my craft and get them more involved. And I did that for a while, and then that didn't really continue into college, but I definitely knew one thing, that I just was really curious about a lot of things. And like Allie said, like you don't really know what you want to do for the rest of your life in high school. And so you just are trying to figure things out. And so that's kind of how I ended up at USC at the Art, Tech, and Business program, because I felt like it was the perfect platform for me to explore my interests and learn interdisciplinary studies and really hone in on this entrepreneurial passion that I felt was always inside of me. And so I think I would say, like, if you use high school as a place to like explore and do your thing, and it's so okay to not know what your passions are, because you're gonna figure it out when you need to figure it out. And I looking back, I'm like, what did I even do in high school? I don't remember. I just felt like I was like constantly exploring, trying to figure things out. And so that's what I did in high school.
Avni, I think I was quite similar to you. It was kind of a mix match of many different things. But when I was growing up, I really wanted to be an architect when I grew up. So I did a lot of design and art classes, but I also did a lot of math and physics and that kind of stuff, because I was like, oh, just in case I want to go down this route, because it would help me in both sides of things. And then when I came into design school, I was still thinking the same thing, like, oh, I'll do, your first year foundation year program and then go ahead and major in architecture. And somewhere down the line, I ended up switching to product design because it felt more like a way of thinking, and just like thinking it helped. I thought it would help be more beneficial in terms of learning how to understand design thinking, and it felt a little bit less intimidating than architecture, which is, has the scale and longer term projects. This just felt like architecture on a smaller scale to me. But I think the main thing that college taught me, or both those things that I liked, was just like being able to understand how to think and problem solve. And I think that translates really well into any entrepreneurial journeys. I think that's kind of what you two were talking about earlier as well.
I think in high school, so I definitely took the business route in high school because I always knew I was interested in it. But I think for me, something I learned from a young age just by being around like a family environment and having my dad own a business, I always thought of entrepreneurship as the thing to do. I just had literally no idea what I wanted to do. And I only figured it out like 6 months ago. So the idea of it was really exciting to me because I always think of entrepreneurship as creating something out of nothing and in turn creating opportunities for other people. And that drives my need to build a business. And so in high school, I was like, okay, there's so much pressure because everyone's trying to get into a great school. There's tons of competition. It's ridiculous, I think, in my opinion. And school definitely wasn't my priority. So it was more so, how can I learn in this environment in the best way possible that has to do with entrepreneurship? So I threw myself into student council. I threw myself into starting a club that solved or went after the sustainable development goals. And then all these different random things just to learn a bunch of things. And I wouldn't say like I started a business in high school at all. It was more so trying all these different initiatives and meeting new people and seeing their passion and seeing what I'm passionate about. And that's kind of what led me. But in high school, it was more so like, let me just try everything and also have a good time, because it's important to make strong friendships and see what, I guess, like lay out all the possible different career paths that you can take, because you shouldn't have to be pressured into doing one single thing, even though sometimes like parents can feel like that, or sometimes that's what society tells you, like you have to do this or you have to do that. So I kind of love the idea of going against the norm and also just trying to figure out like, what the heck can I do? Because I feel like I can do something great if I have the support. So basically, all in all over the place.
I mean, I grew up in an immigrant African family, and so I really had 3 career options growing up, and that was engineer, doctor, or lawyer. So out of those 3, I ended up by happenstance pursuing engineering in college, but that was because I'd taken a summer camp in high school and they offered me a scholarship, and I said, that's free money, so I'll pick this major. No, like zero thought, no, that was about it. But in high school, I actually had 2 of my toughest years in high school. My mom got seriously ill my junior year of high school, so a lot of that was just kind of surviving and kind of just making it through a very tough emotional time for me. And I kind of carried through college a little bit, but yeah, so didn't have that fond memories of high school, to be honest, and I think that's okay.
So because all of your nonprofits or businesses are all very unique, what inspired you to start your own business or nonprofit?
I graduated college and I started working at Condé Nast, which is a huge publishing company. I was making $30,000 a year in New York and babysitting and tutoring on the weekends, working 7 days a week, and was literally living in like the kitchen of a 1-bedroom, and my roommate was in the bedroom. And I remember just like loving life, and like it didn't matter that I was like budgeting against every penny. I thought just being in the city and being an adult and kind of out of the clutches of my just family's influence for the first time, really, it was like really great. I ended up moving jobs, and I started working at a company called Contently. And the reason that I moved to Contently was because working at a big company like that, you don't really have a lot of say. Like I was 22 and I wanted to do so much, and there was so much red tape, it was so bureaucratic. And Contently at the time was like 35 people. It was a startup that was all about like editorial and content marketing. I'm a writer. So I moved to Contently. I was in sales, And a girl that I was working next to, who's 5 years older than me, who is now my co-founder, turned to me and she was like, hey, I know that you're a writer. I'm thinking of starting this magazine called Bulletin that's all about spotlighting small businesses and independent designers. Do you want to be the editor-in-chief of this like shoppable blog that I'm starting? And I was like, yeah, sick. Like that's going to be a great way for me to build up my writing portfolio while I'm making like a much more stable salary and sales at this new startup. And so my saying yes to Alana wasn't like hatching some big plan. We never planned to raise venture capital. We never planned to still be running Bulletin 5 years later to grow the team. It was really just a way for me to fulfill a part of myself that I felt like wasn't being addressed in my full-time job. It became a really exciting kind of low lift side hustle. And that's what it was for the first year. We would work on Bulletin in the evenings and on the weekends. And it was just kind of a way for my co-founder and I to like flex muscles that were like atrophying being in this like very repetitive sales job. So when we decided to go full time, we had applied to this program. It's called Y Combinator. We ended up later doing their core program, but at the time they were offering something called a fellowship grant, which gave companies $20,000 to just pursue their company full time and see what happened. So very thankfully and luckily, we got that grant, which totally blindsided us. It was at the end of 2015. And Alana just looked at me and was like, look, this has been this fun side thing, but like, if we want to really expand this and see if it has legs, we have to take the 20K and invest in it full time. So yeah, we broke off from our full-time jobs. We started working on Bulletin full time. And that risk, I was 24 at the time. It was basically all about just like building the right version of me, is what I like to say. I felt like if I had stayed on this sales executive path or stayed in this like corporate path, because it was what I had experience in, looking at myself 10 years ahead, I wouldn't be living a life or a career that felt true to who I was. And so even though it was really risky and we didn't have that much money, and I ended up cobbling together other part-time jobs to make it work all through 2016. The reason to kind of do Bulletin full-time was to at least try and forge a career path that felt more true to where I saw myself going long-term.
Well, for me, I think the reason why Generation She started, it felt like it was something that I wanted to do for a really long time. Like even in high school, I was looking for some way to be a part of my community and be involved. And on campus at USC, I led this organization called Girls in Tech. And that was kind of where my passion for like women empowerment and getting more gender balanced workplaces really came from. And then I did an internship at LinkedIn the summer before my senior year of college. And I was the only female on my team, like for the 5th internship in a row. And I was kind of like tired of it almost. There was this super awareness that like there needs to be more women in tech, there needs to be more women in leadership in the workplace, and there's lots of organizations doing things for it. But then how come it didn't seem like the numbers were getting better? And on top of that, like LinkedIn was this giant corporation with so much diversity recruitment initiatives to get more women in tech. So it was like, okay, I'm thinking about this giant corporation with so much money and they're still not able to do it. Like there's something missing here and I like want to explore it and I want to like better understand it. And so that's kind of where I started doing a lot of research, and I like interviewed tons of women in tech, like female leaders, and it kind of came down to this hypothesis that I had, which was culture starts from the top. And it's like, regardless of how many women you recruit in the beginning, unless these male-dominated cultures are not really a great place to retain them. And so we need to kind of tackle leadership from the top first before we can expect to create these gender-balanced, diverse workplace environments. And so that was where I got really interested in thinking about getting more women in leadership, thinking about getting more female founders, starting companies. And I really believed that the best age group to invest in was high school girls when they're forming their core beliefs and their core interests. And when they're thinking about this, thinking about their careers and what they want to do. And If you really think about when entrepreneurs really hit their tipping point and become successful, it's usually at a time, maybe after 2, 3 failed small projects or small businesses where they really truly understand what it means to create a business. It tends to be at a time where like women are thinking about starting a family or like having children, and the biological clock that we have is a real thing that like we can't ignore. And why should women have to pick between starting businesses and like having children? And so there tends to be that barrier obstacle in place for when they're just about to make it. Their late 20s, early 30s. And so, okay, so why don't we shift this timeline like 4 years forward and have girls start thinking about entrepreneurship when they're in high school and start their businesses then. So by the time that they're coming out of college, they already kind of have the head start that they need, so they don't have to pick between like having children and starting companies, which is just so unrelated. And it's like so weird that like this is kind of what it comes down to. And so that was how Generation She was born. Actually, I didn't even like it wasn't even called Generation She, it was called She Leads, and it wasn't even an actual company. I just decided I wanted to host a 2-day event at Snapchat headquarters and invite a bunch of high school girls and kind of see what they create and see what sticks and like what they like. And from there, it was super successful, and the girls truly like enjoyed those 2 days, and they came out of it feeling really inspired. And I just got a ton of really great feedback. I was like, okay, this has legs. Like I need to invest more in this specific age group. And then that's kind of how Generation She was born.
That's so inspiring. I love that. I love what you're doing with Generation G. I think that's genius. And I agree with so many of the things you just said. For me, how we started, I think it was, because I didn't grow up here and I'm still on a visa, I didn't even think entrepreneurship was an option while being an immigrant. It just, like, I have a lot of friends from home that moved here for school, and I know so many people here years ahead of me, and no one ever took the entrepreneurial route. So I just assumed that it wasn't even a thing. And I think going through the years, I realized that it is so viable, and it is such, in so many ways, an option that I think is, from the visa perspective, I mean, it is really, really challenging, but it is just as challenging as working a regular job at like for someone else. So I think for how we started, we entered a competition, didn't think anything about it. It was just a response to a challenge. It was a rendering that we submitted and kind of forgot about. And 6 months later, we heard back from UNICEF and Frog, and we're like, oh, we really like this idea. And you guys are semi-finalists. And at the time I hadn't been home to India in about like a year, and I tend to go once a year. And I was like, oh, like I'm going to have 2 weeks off right now from my job anyway. I'll be where I'm thinking this project would work really well. I can do some quick testing. And when I went into a bunch of classrooms, I kind of realized beyond it just being a fun tool, it has a lot more, it has a bigger potential than I had even envisioned. So in those 2 weeks, quickly was able to, formalize our proposal to the competition, do the next step. And then we ended up winning a $15,000 grant. And they were like, oh, we can't give you the grant until you guys incorporate a business. And I was like, can I even do that? Like, is that even a thing? And they had legal support as well. And they helped us incorporate the company. And then it was just like, we got a lot of inbound requests saying, oh, this would be great. I would love to have this. And I was like, oh, people are actually interested in this. We have some money to get, some initial product development going. Why not do this? And I think on the other side, just while I was working here, it felt very unfulfilling, like any role I was doing. I think something I'm always thinking about is being so far from home and being so far from family. Am I really making the best use of my time? And like, if I'm not, I feel like I can just go home and do the same thing. So that's something that I'm always thinking about. And this just felt like I was able to use my potential to its most. And so, and my co-founder, she's also an immigrant. So I think she was just kind of in the same place. I think building trust in the early stage of entrepreneurship is probably one of the hardest things. But we were lucky that, we were in school together and did a bunch of projects. And so it kind of just all fell into place. And yeah, now we're here.
It was an awesome story. Actually, all of these have been really, really inspiring. And part of that is the reason why I love something like how everyone has their own different path to getting to starting a business, because just like we've heard so far, it's super inspiring. And I know there's just so many more inspiring stories to come. In terms of how I started ACE interview prep, so funny enough, I was just about to graduate back in December. So I had about 4 or 5 months left in my degree before all this COVID madness. And everyone's just general fear was, holy crap, how are we going to get a job? just madness all across. And what we found is every single person I was talking to, they were like, man, I don't know how I'm going to interview. I don't have any experience. I don't know how to compete against other people. We have all these other schools who are extremely competitive. Like, where do I stand on? So then I applied for this entrepreneurial program, Next 36. And when I was at the selection weekend, they basically do this final selection weekend where it's literally Hunger Games style. And they put you against 72 other people, and they decide 36 people after who will be part of like the Next 36. And in this, I had 11 interviews back to back. And it was by far the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever experienced. You're just on edge all the time. And I was like, this whole aspect of interviewing, it's a problem for everybody, meaning everybody feels it in a way, whether they're applying for university, applying for a job, applying for programs, you name it. And while this is a very general problem, I still don't see it being fixed. How are all my colleagues and friends telling me like, hey, I still feel really, really nervous, and they need that support, or they need that guidance to say, okay, how do I prepare for this? And so you have like your LinkedIn, your general articles, your Glassdoor, you name it, but people are still feeling this problem. So there must be something that needs to happen here. And when we dug deeper into this, we found that a lot of it comes from lack of experience that creates lack of confidence, and also communication skills in the actual interview. Because we all know when we're nervous, you can mix up your words, you can stumble, you can speak really fast, it all happens, right? And so essentially we were like, okay, this is a really interesting problem. This is not just about the interview, but this is about the individual themselves. And so with my whole, I guess like mantra, you could call it, of trying to create businesses that actually improve people's lives, just as social ventures do, or any businesses that are going for greater good, I was like, hey, I think we can do this here as well. Build up people's personal confidence, make them feel absolutely prepared for what they're trying to do. And so that is what brought us the initial idea. And essentially we were like, okay, let's test it out. Let's see if people actually care about this. And even actually we ran a couple tests just a couple days ago, but people were instantly like, yes, please, I need this. Like, I am like shit scared, like, please, excuse the language. But people were like, oh my God, please help me right now. And so when people are that eager to have that help, we were like, okay, let's do this thing. Let's jump right into it. So that was the story of Starting ACE.
So my path to entrepreneurship has been, I actually had a career pivot a few years ago. And that's kind of how I used the business school, the 2 years I was in business school, to kind of change paths. But I started my career in manufacturing and oil and gas with GE. And it was very, very traditional bureaucratic corporate America situation, and like a 300,000 people organization. And in that experience, I definitely learned how to manage people, how to lead organizations, like running warehouses and things like that. But I very quickly realized that, one, I was on my way to hitting a glass ceiling, and that this notion of meritocracy within corporate America only holds true for a very specific group of people. And that was not me. So I did not want that to be my career, and kind of live with this feeling of I'm doing my best, but everyone else is getting promoted. So I decided to quit, and I went to Stanford, spent 2 years kind of immersing myself in this world of technology and entrepreneurship. And from there came out saying, I want to build my own organization. We need women leaders creating companies where we can show up as our authentic selves. And yeah, so I just took that into my own hands and decided that's my contribution to the world. So yeah, so that was me being very set on, I'm going to be a founder, I'm going to be a CEO. The journey towards open beauty kind of started from my own personal need. I had hyperpigmentation and scarring that I wanted to correct. And I ended up going to 5 different derms who told me they didn't know how to treat my skin. And that was just a very disappointing experience. And I decided to do something about it myself. And then kind of went the very traditional venture path of, let's push out an MVP. Let's see if we can get users. Cool, that works. Now let's go get money. So yeah, so that was my journey.
All of your stories are so inspiring and empowering. I loved hearing what you had to share. And I love how each one of your businesses tackle a pretty prominent issue in our world. So our next question is, what is a challenge you faced being a female founder and how did you overcome it?
Challenge do I pick? You know, it's interesting. Okay, so I'm also a venture-backed business, like Nora. And when you walk into a room to try to get investment from investors, as a female founder, you have to show way more evidence that your idea is a good idea than if you're a male founder. So like when Bulletin raised its seed round, we were already making money and profitable at that point. Like we had actual cash flowing through the business, we had users. We did Y Combinator, which is this like very prestigious accelerator program, they like to say, in Silicon Valley. And there were like male founded companies in my cohort where I was like, they were just at the idea stage. And we had been working on our idea for like a year and a half, 2 years at that point. We had users, we had money, we had all this stuff. And it was shocking to like be in a cohort and be like, oh, damn, like we were getting doubted throughout the entire interview experience. We got rejected like 3 times before we actually got in. And to see these other companies founded by dudes that had gotten in with so much less, like the first time that they interviewed, I was like, this is a huge problem. And so I do feel like it's kind of been this uphill battle of like, you know, you have to enter a room and you can't make a mistake. Like there's kind of this feeling of like, if you don't know your front and back, like you're not qualified. You're not going to hold the investors' attention, or you're not going to convince them that your idea is worthy or that your business is going as well as it is. It's still very frustrating. I see announcements on Twitter or on, Instagram that companies that don't have revenue, have only been around for 6 months, and have only like a few beta users are raising like way more money than Alana and I raised at our seed stage. So I think that bias is just definitely there. There was a Harvard Business Review study, maybe it was in like 2018, it might've been 2 or 3 years ago, that literally studied this experience for female founders, where you as a female founder walk into a room and investors are more likely to ask you as a woman questions about how your idea is going to fail. They want to know where the holes are, where the weaknesses are, how competitors are going to outperform you, like how they basically are asking you like, how is this going to go wrong? And the same study says that when male founders walk into a room, VCs are like, how are you going to take market share? Like, how are you going to make this $1 billion business? Like, how are you going to stomp on your competitors? And it's just such an inverse conversation. So while I feel that has kind of plagued us, we have clearly successfully raised money. We've successfully raised a pre-seed and a Series A. But it takes female founders a lot more work and hustle and number crunching and like the sleekest presentation possible to make those things happen. So yeah, I'd say that is something that has been challenging to see around me. But you can't be fazed by it. You just have to focus on yourself, and you gotta, get that check. Even if they are asking way more of you, you have to do it, because we do have to set this example that female founders can raise and can build big organizations.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a real thing. Like literally less than 2% investment capital is given to women or something like that. And it's such a real issue. It's also like a huge reason why Generation She does what it does, so we can prepare like women to like have those numbers like down, and like when they are getting asked those really hard questions, they do know what to say. But I think for me, as like a nonprofit founder, one of the biggest things that we have to do is raise money so that we can support our organization and actually host the events that we want to host. And when it comes to inviting female founders to be speakers at our events, or having like small female founded businesses donate like swag as a sponsor, like that's been relatively easy to get done. Like they understand kind of why we're doing this, and they want to be a part of this because they experienced this firsthand. But I think in terms of like raising money, or like getting companies to, like large corporations and companies, to really care about this and want to invest their money and donate and be a sponsor for our event, has proven to be super difficult, because I think there is that awareness that yes, there is not enough female leaders and there needs to be more female founders, but they don't truly understand that in order for us to like bridge that gap and get there, they need to invest in younger talent. They need to invest in the next generation. And so really being able to get a company to understand that and to really believe in our mission, and specifically want to put their money and their dollars into like high school teens, has proven to be pretty difficult. And I think one of my biggest challenges as a female founder, and I definitely can't say like I figured it out. We've come a long way from the beginning, and we are doing better when it comes to like really raising money and getting sponsors and partners to be involved. But it's not an easy conversation, and I'm always trying to better understand how we can better explain what we do and really convince them and make them realize that if you want to invest in bridging the gender gap in the workplace and bringing more female leaders to the table, then you really need to focus on putting your dollars in high school girls and young teens, and partnering with us. And so I think like at the end of the day, what I've really learned is you really have to believe in your mission and really just be so passionate about it, and get your numbers right, and really know what you're talking about, that they have nothing else to say but I'm like, okay, like this makes sense, and we do want to support this. So that's kind of what I've learned so far, but I'm still definitely figuring this out like day by day.
I think so many challenges being a female founder. I think one of the main ones for us is on the manufacturing side. It's anytime we talk to a new formulator or a new contract manufacturer to try to produce the goods, automatically when you're chatting with them on the phone, they'll be like, yeah, of course we can do this. The second they see you in person and they're like, oh, young female founder, they'll just list a bunch of problems and how this is going to be such a big hassle for them, even though we meet all their minimums, all of that, and have like sold enough product. So it's about like, I think for us, if we don't find the right introduction, so we need to find a way that we're introduced to these partners in a very specific way to even convince them to work with us. That's one. I think another is just having a mentor who is a female is really has been really successful and important for us. And I think in the beginning when we started, finding mentors and whatnot, I was just like, oh, of course I like this one person and this is a good relationship. But I think you have to keep doing that and keep still finding more and more mentors and still keep growing your network. I think that just adds a lot of value to you in your business. I think another thing that me and my co-founder have done, because we didn't grow up here and don't have the same level of networks as people who did, is that we're always trying to be in lots of different accelerators and programs. So like in a year we'll be in like 3 or 4, and there's no need for us to be in them in terms of getting the business model right. Or I mean, obviously there's like growth and there's all of that, but a lot of the reason why we do them is to build our network. And I think as a female founders, I think that's just really important to do, because in that way you're just creating more barriers of support for yourself. So if you're like, okay, if I fail tomorrow, at least I have a network that I can lean on to. And yeah, it's kind of, that's us.
I feel like, I don't know, this has always been a interesting topic for me, because I felt like ever since I talked about wanting to be an entrepreneur, you have some people being like, yes, you can do it, go for it. And then you have some people who are just like, don't take me seriously. And it's like, what the heck? But like if somebody else had done it, like my brother or like a male counterpart, I don't know, it's always like, oh, totally, you can do it. You've got the background, you've got the this, you've got the that. And so there's been so many different experiences that I've had that people just don't take it seriously. And even so, like one time I was actually running a sales consulting, like a sales strategy firm a couple of years back. And I literally had a mentor, and like I used to be part of this program where they do like mentorship and they give you grant money and all that stuff. And a mentor literally told me, go after contractors and guys and be like, act like their wives in their sales process. And I was like, sorry, I don't actually understand what you're trying to tell me here. I'm actually trying to run a business, not be all these guys' wives. It actually doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And so comments like that blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe people think like this. And so it's almost given me that fire to push even harder to be like, listen, I am freaking smart. I can do this. Like, I have got what it takes. I just maybe have to take a couple steps more. But when you, like Ali had said, when you show you've got the numbers, you've got the drive, you just have to push harder. Unfortunately, that's where the bias is. But after these ridiculous experiences that I had and people saying these type of things to me, I was like, no, I can't accept this. And I can't just play this role of like, okay, I'll be subdued and just not do anything about it. I'll show them what's what type of thing. And people are very aware of it too. Like multiple male mentors actually in this program as well have said, unfortunately, you do need to push harder because it's just the way it works. And I said, well, that shouldn't be the way it works, but I will prove otherwise type thing. And so it's just this weird toss up of not being taken seriously. But then you have, I would say definitely in the programs I'm seeing now, there's a bit of a change now saying like female founders are freaking killing it. Like it's ridiculous how many strong founders there are. So let's keep pushing and supporting because we are not stopping now.
I wholeheartedly agree with every experience that's been shared. So nothing really to add on that front in terms of like external pushbacks. So another angle to this for me has also been kind of understanding my own like imposter syndrome and internal like negative self-talk that is present, and kind of recognizing when I am sort of sabotaging myself and learning how to coach myself out of those situations, right? And okay, like I have this voice, I have this belief, and either journaling my way through it or talking to a friend about it, and kind of, yeah, like developing different tactics to manage that side of thing, because that also shows up in how I carry myself and how I manage my team. So I think it's really, really important when you are a leader and a founder that you're in tune with that side of yourself, just as much as, you know, we're all boss ladies and we're kicking it and proving the world wrong externally, but also kind of carry that within as well and being our best coach as well.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your experiences and your advice. That was very cool to hear and super inspiring as well. So now we're going to open up our panel to any of the attendees. So if you have any questions, then you can just unmute yourself or you can ask them in the chat. That's fine as well. We have a few minutes left, but we can go over if everyone can stay. That would be fine as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Izzy. I really loved hearing all of your stories, and thank you all so much for speaking and you know, sharing the Zoom room with us. I guess my question is, you know, I'm 17 and I'm really serious about pursuing entrepreneurship. I'm thinking about going to business school, but you know, I have a new plan all the time, but that's kind of my mode of entry into the world of entrepreneurship. But you know, I guess I'm asking if, you know, someone told you that when you were 17 you were going to be where you were today, is there anything that you could have wished they would have thrown into, any one piece of advice that you really wish that you had with you throughout this whole growing your business experience? And yeah.
I think one of the most valuable pieces that somebody could have given me that I didn't actually learn till university is one of the hardest things about starting is actually starting. And it literally just took me a couple conversations to start to get the ball rolling. And it kind of blew my mind as to, not simple, because it's not very, like, it's not simple as you build the whole thing, but to actually start is really, really hard. And you just need to take that step. So I know it sounds very easy or very like a general comment, but I can't stress it enough. If you have an idea, I mean, you can reach out to us, you can reach out to anybody, like you're part of a community now that you can talk to people about it. because I would assume that, like, let's say all 5 of us, we'd have some sort of connection or advice to give you to help you out. And even if you don't have that, you can literally reach out on LinkedIn, you can post about it somewhere, you can talk to your friends at school, just start to get ideas. But the whole thing is seriously just to start. And I cannot stress it enough, because it'll get you excited, it'll get the ball rolling, it'll get the fire under you like really started. And so it's extremely important in my opinion. And it sounds super simple, but I didn't think about it at the time. And it just seemed like a huge barrier in between me starting something and being on the side of like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. So I cannot stress it enough, just start. And you can always reach out to me or whoever, but always happy to provide that, because I wish I knew that when I was 17, as simple as it sounds.
I think that was so in line with what I was going to say. And the only thing I'd add is also knowing that after you start, it's going to be really hard. Like knowing that you're going to have these really down and depressive moments. Like entrepreneurship is extremely difficult. And like sometimes you feel like you're on top of the world and everything is going exactly as you planned and you're on the up and up. And then, I mean, there are instances where we had like serious, like we didn't know if the business was going to last another 2 months. Like it goes there no matter what type of business you're running, no matter how long you've been running the business. No company, no founder is spared from that roller coaster. And so I think I wish I'd known that going in, because when I actually started my entrepreneurial journey, like Girl Boss had just come out, and like, you know, it was just this very like Instagrammy, glamorous, like, you know, thing. And it's really, there are times where you're going to want to quit. And I think knowing that up front will help you when you're in those moments be like, oh, this was always coming. Like, I'm not a failure. I'm not like an exception. I'm not like messing up. It's just, you know, it's a volatile experience. And so I think just knowing that going in after, as Lauren said, you do the hardest part, which is just getting started, will help you be easy on yourself when things get really difficult.
I totally agree with what Ali said. I'm gonna add one more thing too. I don't think you should try to define yourself by your age, but rather you're defined by your experiences. And so I wish someone told me that, because I felt like I was so much younger and I just like would blindly listen to adults because I thought it was the right thing to do. But there's really not much difference between like us and you guys, honestly. Like maybe there's like some years behind, maybe some experiences we had that you guys haven't had yet. But if you want to be this person or have this skill, or just like get the experience you need to do that, and don't be defined by like how old you are or like what year in school you are. And so I think that's like one thing that I would tell myself.
Trusting your gut, I think, just, you know, that I think is probably like the hardest part, because you kind of very early on start sensing something if something is wrong. And then I think you have to just remind yourself as you go forward that, okay, if I didn't trust my gut, then I only have myself to blame in that situation. So just really being in tune with that is, in my opinion, one of like the most important things.
I'm happy to give my perspective on this. What would I like to tell myself when I was 17? One, you're freaking awesome. Don't listen to what society tells you can't or should do. Yeah, like that's the biggest thing. And then 2, like take risks. There is no such thing as failure. Try something, do it small. You're young, like it's life is gonna work out really well. Just take it one day at a time and be brave.
So this is from Victoria. She would like to know, what are some steps that we need to take in order to start a successful business?
I think it depends on like what type of business you want to start, one, and then 2, like why even put successful? Like start something. Like I personally would not like have that this mental mode of like it needs to be successful. Like you just starting something is you doing amazing, like, and you will become successful, like whether it's with this first business or any other business down the road. But I think for venture-backed business, there definitely are a lot of resources online on like different type of business model, like marketplaces, direct to consumer, like things that have been proven to be good ways to kind of start an idea. So there, I would recommend like pulling those resources, whether it is from Y Combinator or anything else. Then maybe some of you nonprofit founders want to share like what the path is on that end.
I would just kind of a little bit repetitive what we said before, but for starting a business, it's literally what Lauren said, like you just have to start. We weren't a official tax exempt nonprofit until almost a year into the thing. We already had like tons of girls who were on board with our mission. We already had a whole event. We had sponsors and partners. We just for like that specific moment, we partnered with another nonprofit, used their tax exempt ID for like very temporarily. Like I think there's no such thing as like steps to start a business. I think it's just unique to whatever you're trying to do. I would say really truly whatever it is you're passionate about, just put something out there. Like this, it can be the smallest thing. It could be a Google form, it could be like an Instagram post or anything. It could be like literally lemonade stand booth-esque type situation, and just see how your users are responding to it, learn from them, ask them questions, and then kind of from there, like things will very naturally fold out, and you'll kind of get this entrepreneurial gut instinct of like what are the next steps you need to do, and like how you want to like pivot and iterate on whatever product or service you're building upon. And so I would say that there aren't like formal steps.
Yeah, I was also going to say there's a book called, which is a pretty, what's it called? It's The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And it's a super popular book, like very well known. And I can type it in the chat if anyone hasn't heard of it, but it's a great foundation, I would say. It's a really great way to understand how to think about a company, because in a general sense, he's basically saying, think about the why of the company, not the what. And it changes the entire way that you actually build this company. So it's for if you're just starting out. And I saw that Nazreen had also asked something about advice to a beginner in online businesses. Even just reading a book like that and then starting to Google, let's say like Y Combinator resources. Y Combinator also actually has a program called Startup School, and it's offered to everybody. So I did it. I'm not in Y Combinator, but it's basically 8 weeks, and you get all these lectures. You get to meet people. There's discussion forums, and there's no real restrictions around who can actually be a part of it, which I think is fantastic. But you also get Y Combinator level learnings from it. So you can learn everything from the basics, like how do you even come up with an idea, all the way to how do you raise money or how do you price something out. So in any business that you guys are thinking about, I think these are two really great resources. And I'm sure the other panelists might have some more, but again, I think it's just a different path for everybody, but these are really great foundational things to learn about. So that's my 2 cents on it.
The only thing I'd add is I think sales is really important for any business. Like you're going to have to convince people to become your users, to partner with you, to invest in your business potentially. If you do a crowdfunding campaign, you're going to need to know how to market that and kind of tell your story. So I would honestly Google like top 5 best sales books. I was a sales executive for a few years, so I learned on the ground, but I do think pitching, convincing, basically like getting users to do the behavior that you're asking of them is sales in a lot of ways. So definitely invest in kind of exploring sales as a skill set, in addition to everything that everyone else mentioned.
Question is, what characteristics would you look for in a co-founder or a business partner? And how would you divide responsibilities, and should they be friends and family? Does anybody want to start with this?
I can start with that one. I think trust. I think a lot of people say like, oh, find someone with different skill sets. And I definitely agree with that. But I think when I started my business, I didn't, I wasn't really thinking, oh, it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, because it kind of just happened. But I think if you're thinking about something that is going to have is going to last at least 5 to 10 years, you really have to trust that person in every aspect, whether it's like finances, knowing when you're having a hard time with something, you don't feel like if you're not good at something, you can't share that with them. So I think just really a lot of trust. And you kind of also just you want to be comfortable enough that that person isn't trying to cheat you or isn't trying to do something else and all of that. So I think trust is the most important thing for me.
Does anyone else here have a co-founder, or is it just the 2 of us? Oh, okay. What I always say is like, think about, know them well enough first. Like I I do know, I interviewed a lot of founders for my book, and I do know a handful of founders that met their co-founder at like a networking event and kind of formed a company soon after. And I feel like those stories, it's rare for those stories to turn out well because you just don't have an intimate working relationship or kind of full picture understanding of that person yet or so quickly. So Alana and I had worked together for like 8 months or so before I kind of agreed to work on Bulletin with her. And then we worked on it as a side project for a little over a year. So I had that experience. And so by the time we took this risk together and invested in it full time, I knew who I was dealing with. I think the most important thing, especially early on, is work with someone that you don't have to hold accountable. Work with someone that's going to hold themselves accountable. Like, imagine this person, what are they doing when you're not looking? Are they waiting for you to say, get this done, here's the list, here are your tasks? Or are they adding value consistently day over day through their own mind and proactive work and things that they can bring to the table? You never want to feel like you're babysitting someone through founding a company. I've heard stories like that, and it's just like, it slows you down, and it's just a dynamic that doesn't really give the company its best shot. So if you have a friend that like does a ton of side projects on their own, or who is super creative but also productive and is kind of has this entrepreneurial spirit already, I totally start a company with them. I know a lot of founders that started companies with their friends, but it was because they had that kind of in between the fingers thing of like being able to do work on their own, hold themselves accountable, and build the company with like very little direction from their co-founder.
Definitely. And actually, funny that you mentioned that. 2 of those mishaps that you mentioned, I went right through them because I made the mistake. So this advice is definitely useful that I didn't have at the time. But literally, like that selection weekend that I was telling you guys about, I had met somebody there, and the whole selection weekend is a bunch of entrepreneurs together fighting for these spots. So we came together after the weekend. We were like, hey, let's start a project together. Let's do it. And what it ended up being was not going through almost like a due diligence of understanding if we'd actually be good to work together. And me ending up saying, hey, did you get this done? Hey, did you do that? Did you do this? And it shouldn't be like that. And so I actually went on a full new co-founder search a couple months ago. And I literally took like 3-4 weeks to do it because it's just that important. And basically when I was looking for this business partner, co-founder, whatever you want to call it, I was looking for a couple different things. One, I'm a very non-technical person, so looking for somebody who was technical. So exactly the opposite skills to what I had. 2, did they fit the vision that I believe in? So my whole thing here is, can we create confidence in interviewing? And what's their view on it? How do they see it? And why is it so important to them? So when I found my co-founder, actually ended up being a friend that has a very entrepreneurial like way about him, and he has a bunch of side projects, always working, and one of those people that literally, he actually carries around a neuroscience textbook with him because he likes it for light reading. I was like, damn, okay, this is great. And so he thought this whole vision in the same but different ways. We came together, like we have very different skill sets, but we're on the path to accomplishing the same thing. And then after that, we went through, okay, are we both financially able to do this? Are we, how's our equity split going to look like? All the possible things we could cover to see, are we going to be working well together? And in that time, we were working on ideas together and saying, let's try like a mini hackathon style project together and see how it works. And after going through all of that, then I felt like I was comfortable to do so. So it's different for everybody for sure, but there's some fundamental things you need to watch out for. Especially, you don't want to be in that situation of you're literally babysitting your co-founder, because then you're running a babysitting service, not a company. So you don't want that. And it can truly slow you down, because it stopped me from progressing for about 3-4 months. But you live and you learn, and we're here now, so it's all good. So, okay. Another question we have is, how do you deal with self-doubt / confidence versus knowing when to really take the advice of others when it may be a bit discouraging?
So for me, when I take advice from others, I'm actually rather discriminate of like, who is this person giving me advice? And it's not coming from a place of like being defensive or not being able to be self-aware or take criticism. But I think the founder experience is very unique, and sometimes people feel compelled to give you advice on things that, one, they've never taken the chance upon doing themselves, and they're giving you this advice from a place of comfort and not having lived your experience. So I would say be very thoughtful of who you turn to for advice, and make sure that either they're experts at the topic that you're asking them about, whether that's sales, marketing, or anything else, or someone that has been in the trenches and know what this is like and actually is coming from a place of experience. I think that's really important. And then self-doubt and confidence. I think that's very normal and natural and part of like just being a human. So I think for me, at least personally, the first step is always like just embracing that and like recognizing that this is okay to feel this way. I am doing something that's very daunting. It is scary to build a company, especially as a first-time founder. It's part of the experience. And then two, for me, it's like kind of looking back at, you know, my track record and taking confidence in that, hey, I've done some pretty cool things. I've lived through some pretty, like, I've demonstrated resilience in my life, and being able to tap into that. And then perhaps most importantly is kind of, for me at least, is being centered on why I'm building this. Like, what's my purpose? What's my intention here? And really believing that like this is my path and I find purpose in this path, and that gives me strength to push through.
I would say fake it till you make it. It's a real thing. I think self-doubt is something we're going to experience all the time in whatever stage of an entrepreneurship you're in. So I would just be okay with that. Be okay with not knowing. Just know that you build confidence by having experiences. And so the only way to have experiences is to put yourself out there and genuinely just make sure that you get other people to believe in you, and then naturally you will see what you can do and that you're capable, and the confidence will kind of it'll come naturally from just kind of proving to yourself that you can do it. So like put yourself out there and like really take the saying fake it till you make it seriously. It's a real thing that we all do.
I have like very minor tactical advice, which is like for Lauren, for example, talking about like these experiments and this research that she's been doing to validate her company. If you have friends or family or like acquaintances that are like shitting on your idea, or that don't believe in you, or they're giving you, as you said, I think it was like critical, I don't know, like discouraging advice. If you have the data and the work to back up that you have a good idea, then like that's a great way to offset what these people are telling you. Like if you can look at a survey or a big customer research project that you did, or if you spent a lot of time like learning about the space, talking to founders that are already in the space, talking to your potential customers, like that, whatever those people say, you kind of have that data and you have that evidence to tell yourself. You don't need to tell them. You don't need to prove it to them. Let's just like get them out of your life. But to tell yourself that this is something you should keep doing. So I think if you don't have that data, if you don't have that to back up this idea that you have, it can definitely be difficult to know, like, am I delusional or not? That's pretty much the question that founders ask themselves every day that they wake up. They're like, wait, am I delusional? But if you have that information at your fingertips, then you can look at it and say, I'm not delusional. I did the work to show myself that this is a strong startup or this is a strong idea, and people can come at me, but I have what I need to stay confident and see this through.
Can I just add to that? I think it's important to recognize, like, if you feel this entrepreneurial spirit within you, you're most likely a visionary. Like, you're trying to will something into the world that does not exist, and not everyone has that gift. And I just think it's so special and something to protect. And a lot of people just don't, like, not everyone is a visionary, and not everyone aspires and has that desire and the drive to do something this difficult. So keeping that in the back of your mind when people give you discouraging advice is, for me at least, helpful.
100%. And all those points were excellent. Just to add a tiny thing onto that, I think for me, it's more so just thinking about always going back to the why, like, why am I actually doing this? And you'll get discouraging advice all the time. People will tell you it literally all the time. You'll have a great day where you have all this great stuff happening, and then boom, something really bad happens. So it's kind of just being aware of that. And like Ali said, literally confidence can be gained from that evidence. Like, you have the survey data, you have things to tell you, hey, this is leading towards this. Customer data is literally the best indicator of anything you could ever decide. But that was a really great question. I really like that one. And finally, I think there's one more. Okay, so the last question, I believe is more for the nonprofits, is I have a .org website and running charity services using my own money. Do I have to register the company if I have to start running summer camps with a minimal fee?
So I would say that the only, I guess, benefit of registering as a nonprofit is to be tax exempt. And so if you want to make sure that at the end of the fiscal year, that whatever you report you get, you don't have to pay taxes on that. That's kind of where the benefit comes in. And then also if you want like other corporations and other partners to assist you and help fund what the summer camp that you're providing, you need to be able to provide them tax exempt status so that they have an incentive to partner with you. Because if you have tax exempt status, then they get to write off their taxes and they're more willing to want to help you and donate and sponsor and things like that. So I think it truly depends on if you want to tap into those benefits. And then if say you want to do something maybe next year, like I would definitely start the process like right now. The government is pretty slow, and so it can take anywhere from 6 months to a year to get the paperwork you need. And there's actually multiple steps, and in between these multiple steps, you can't really move forward unless you hear back from them like via mail, and it's like literally snail mail. So like get on it for sure if you want to tap into that. But yeah, I'm sorry. I hope I understood your question correctly.
Chloe, I think that was all the questions we had.
Yeah, okay, so I think we're going to wrap up the panel now. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. I love hearing all of your advice, and also thank you for the attendees for asking great questions. I loved hearing all of your responses, so I think I'm going to end the Zoom call now, and thank you all for attending. We hope to see you at future.
Bye, thanks for having us.
Bye, thank you.